Hi, this is Max. I'm back with another Csr2 video. This time it is the Subaru BRZ Rocket Bunny. Today is the first day of the supply cup for this car, and if you have pulled it from the silver key crates, you probably have it either mildly built or totally stock at the moment. Now, the BRZ is not one of those dyno crushing cars that you can easily tune to destroy dynos, so therefore the supply cup is not going to be as easy as it looks. So for me, what I did is I upgraded my car to basically just enough to start tuning, which is stage 3 nitrous, stage 4 trans, and stage 3 tire. This allows me to tweak the car into the negative evo zone. The reason I did this is because I want to be able to beat dyno by a little bit, enough that the supply cup does not become a headache for me. And the easiest way to do that really is to kind of drop your final drive ratio. You can go as extreme as this, which is 2.0. That'll give you a negative 999 setup at 16.139 when you're using the 0 to 100 tire as well. Nitrous is what you're going to be using to push the car through to a faster time. I find that this technique does work, but 16 seconds is really, really slow to run each of the quarter mile. So I would rather set it up somewhere where it can beat dyno enough and yet run a semi-decent quarter mile so I don't have to wait almost 20 seconds for each run. But regardless, the way to avoid a 0 RPM drop is simply launching early. 4.5K seems like a good spot to be. And then once the car picks up speed, you can then hit the nitrous to push it through. And this will allow it to hit a pretty decent speed, about 90 miles per hour, and beats dyno by a little bit. Now, this isn't the actual setup I used, which is, I'll show you in a second, which is actually targeting the third gear to end up at the top speed. So let's see what that did first. 15.7 on a 16.1 dyno. So that 4/10 will make it very easy for you to get through the supply cup and get your fusions that you'll need to make the car a little bit better. But I can tell you this car is going to be a third gear nitrous car once you have fusions and upgrades. But here's what I did is I adjusted it a little more to here, where it is still negative evo, but the dyno is a lot better. Now, I'm going to knock it down a little bit. So 13.59 is where the computer's saying you'll be doing. You simply drive it by launching same way, 4.5K, nitrous in second gear, and just kind of riding out third gear. That should give you about a 2/10 dyno beating run, which is just enough really for supply cup. You don't have to beat dyno by a huge amount to win supply cup. You just have to beat it by enough so that you can win it with a safe margin. Otherwise, what you may end up doing is wasting a lot of gas and time on the supply cup. And I don't feel like doing that. I personally prefer to kind of get through it, get my 12K points, get my 4 fusions, and move on. Now, the 25 runs you should do, especially if you're newer, because they pay well. So at 12K plus each run, that is going to give you a decent amount of money too towards further upgrades. So the supply cup should always be run. It should not be ignored. So that was a 13.440 on a 13.597, almost 13.6 dyno. Now, let's see how this works in actual practice. Let's move it to an actual supply cup. Okay, here we go. As you can see, I've done a few runs so far. Now, the first 5 runs are very easy, so the opponent's not going to be super hard. The last 5 runs is what you really care about. Those are probably going to be the toughest. But I don't see that the escalation of the opponent times being extreme. Usually, it just gets very close to what you technically dyno, even with a slight margin. So if you're just a very good driver, you can always make it through supply cup without any trickery. But wasting gas is not on the top of my list, as I said. So something like this, a little bit of a trick, will help you through the supply cup quickly and make sure you get your fusions and your points without much of a headache. I do this practically with every car that comes along, and it has served me well so far to help me get through the day without spending an hour on the supply cup. As you can see, right now it is pretty easy to get the run through, get the opponent to run a decent amount behind you so you don't feel stressed. And again, whoops, that's not going to be good. You got to launch it early. You got to make sure it's around 4.5K. If you get too close to perfect, the car will launch with a 0 RPM drop, which will make things a little bit trickier. Now, that one was actually slower than dyno. As you can see, the opponent still didn't beat me, but it's very close now. So launching it right, having that 0.2 margin does make a big difference as you proceed further through the cup. So this is the technique, again, to kind of simply make supply cup easier. It is not necessarily going to be a good technique for other things. It may be useful if you were struggling in some cases with, for example, stock engine restriction trials and other things. Same technique can be used. But again, the Subaru so far, even with fusions, does not seem to be a massively dyno beating car. It runs almost identically in style to the Cayman GT4, which is interesting. I know Nitro Motion always says they don't reuse stuff, but you know, you always kind of question whether they did or not. The car certainly seems and feels like a slightly detuned Cayman GT4. Now, the car obviously doesn't look like one, but even the engine bay, I'll show you real quick, looks like it's straight carryover from KJ's FRS, which is your turbocharged LS motor in the BRZ. So again, the exterior definitely is different. The car drives and tunes much like a GT4 with a little bit of difference, and ends up driving somewhat similar to the GT4 as well. Is it going to turn out to be a good car? Well, the GT4 is not a bad car, so I don't anticipate the BRZ being terrible. However, it is slower. It maxes out, from what I understand, at about 8.6 in the quarter mile, so it's not going to be super competitive in T3 once you max it. Is it good enough to use in Tempest 3? Well, if you don't have the Warsteiner GT4 maxed and you end up with this car maxed, my feeling is yes, you can use it for Tempest 3, but it will struggle a little bit at the 0 to 60 challenges. It's not going to have a problem beating them, but it won't beat them by a huge margin. So that is the brief summary of the Subaru BRZ Rocket Bunny. My current car has no fusions installed, and simply a few simple upgrades to make sure I could tune the car. And I hope that you will have no problem with the Supply Cup, and good luck this season with the PC Cup. Please feel free to comment if you have any questions, and leave a like if you like the video. Please subscribe so you can get notifications when I put up additional videos. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good one.